vibe, yeah, that's a vibe. It's a vibe, it's a vibe, that's a vibe, yeah.
Won't you let a nigga breathe? You always worried about me, stressing over things you heard about me. Won't you let a nigga breathe? Always saying you're hurting about me, that's who I am, ain't nothing perfect about me. Won't you let a nigga breathe? You always worried about me, stressing over things you heard about me. Won't you let a nigga breathe? Always saying you're hurting about me, that's who I am, ain't nothing perfect about me. Won't you let a nigga back up, bitch? Why you always trying to press a nigga? If it ain't one thing, it's the next, it starts to stress a nigga. This overthinking that you doing, it affects a nigga. Patience running thin with you for real, bitch, don't you test a nigga. Ain't never been the type to show no one affection, nigga. She don't trust me, say I'm the reason she don't mess with niggas. Calls me toxic cause I ain't with none of the extras, niggas. Pushing me away, girl, once I'm gone, you ain't gon' catch a nigga. I'm feeling boxed in, I need me some space. There ain't no turning back like TK, I'm doing the race. Forget the bitch, I bag the only thing I ever would chase. Thought you was coming with sight, your number getting erased. On to the next, you should've known how wide the look on your face. Get the fuck from off my phone, it's best that you know your place. These years I'll never get them back, with you they go in the waste. Got what I want and now I'm skating and you getting replaced. Won't you let a nigga breathe? You always worried about me, stressing over things you heard about me. Won't you let a nigga breathe? Always saying you're hurting about me, that's who I am, ain't nothing perfect about me. Won't you let a nigga breathe? You always worried about me, stressing over things you heard about me. Won't you let a nigga breathe? Always saying you're hurting about me, that's who I am, ain't nothing perfect about me. Won't you let a nigga breathe?
That's a vibe, that's a vibe, that's a vibe, oh that's a vibe, yeah, that's a vibe. It's a vibe, it's a vibe, that's a vibe, yeah.
Won't you let a nigga breathe? You always worried about me, stressing over things you heard about me. Won't you let a nigga breathe? Always saying you're hurting about me, that's who I am, ain't nothing perfect about me. Won't you let a nigga breathe? You always worried about me, stressing over things you heard about me. Won't you let a nigga breathe? Always saying you're hurting about me, that's who I am, ain't nothing perfect about me. Won't you let a nigga back up, bitch? Why you always trying to press a nigga? If it ain't one thing, it's the next, it starts to stress a nigga. This overthinking that you doing, it affects a nigga. Patience running thin with you for real, bitch, don't you test a nigga. Ain't never been the type to show no one affection, nigga. She don't trust me, say I'm the reason she don't mess with niggas. Calls me toxic cause I ain't with none of the extras, niggas. Pushing me away, girl, once I'm gone, you ain't gon' catch a nigga. I'm feeling boxed in, I need me some space. There ain't no turning back like TK, I'm doing the race. Forget the bitch, I bag the only thing I ever would chase. Thought you was coming with sight, your number getting erased. On to the next, you should've known how wide the look on your face. Get the fuck from off my phone, it's best that you know your place. These years I'll never get them back, with you they go in the waste. Got what I want and now I'm skating and you getting Won't
replaced.
you let a nigga breathe? You always worried about me, stressing over things you heard about me. Won't you let a nigga breathe? Always saying you're hurting about me, that's who I am, ain't nothing perfect about me. Won't you let a nigga breathe? You always worried about me, stressing over things you heard about me. Won't you let a nigga breathe? Always saying you're hurting about me, that's who I am, ain't nothing perfect about me. Won't you let a nigga breathe?
That's a vibe, that's a vibe, oh that's a vibe, yeah, that's a vibe.
Yeah, it's Benz. Nigga, where am I going? Drop the four with my cup, now I'm floating. I can't feel a thing, to be real, I just go through the motions. Where am I going? Nigga, I'm in deep like the ocean. I've been in my bag, everybody around me I'm ghosting. Where am I going? Dropped the foe in my cup, now I'm floating. I can't feel a thing, to be real, I just go through the motions. Where am I going? Nigga, I'm in deep like the ocean. I've been in my bag, everybody around me, I'm ghosting. Where am I going? I don't know.
We are going to another episode of HardFoul Radio. This is the show that values time, so let's not waste any. Appreciate you guys for joining in, as always. So, there's two divisions we have left to cover for NFL preseason storylines, predictions, and that is both the NFC South and the AFC South. I had a personal emergency I had to attend to last week, so I was not able to cover the AFC South. So we're going to cover both. And maybe this is unfair because these are, in my opinion, probably the two least interesting divisions to talk about. Almost every other division has like a team that is either take my bias out, a powerhouse in it. Like the AFC West has Kansas City. Take away my bias and my fandom of the Broncos. The Chiefs are noteworthy, newsworthy. They're always going to be talked about, right? Or you have a division that's extremely competitive top to bottom, like the AFC North. Or you have the NFC West, where it's, like I said yesterday, potentially the smartest division in football, especially when you think of Kyle Shanahan, Sean McVay, all this stuff, John Lynch, Les Snead. Like, there is so much stuff to talk about, which is why I think I really get frustrated when people take, and especially on big media networks, take these teams or these storylines and they just run with the simplest thing and then they replay it and give you the same story to start off each show, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Or my biggest thing, which we're going to get into a lot of media talk next week, one of my biggest things I dislike is when they start a show with something and then they bring that same topic back an hour later to just slightly modify it. I don't love that. Really don't like it. But the AFC South and the NFC South are, just let's be flat out, the two least interesting teams. There is, between all 8, there's one team that people think has a realistic chance to be special, and that'd be the Texans and C.J. Stroud, and that's based off solely last year. But my issue with the Texans is this is still, 2 years away. We're only 2 years, not even a full 2 years removed from what was considered a bottom-end roster. And while we all love C.J. Stroud and we like Nico Collins and we like Tank Dell, that's still, you're not that far removed. You haven't, as we've talked about teams that have to rip it front of the studs and then build back up, they're not that far removed from being at the studs. So while I love C.J. Stroud and I would love to be all in on the Texans and I'm there with everybody as far as the excitement, we probably need to calm down in the excitement a little bit. They're probably not quite there yet. We always generally in sports, especially the NFL, we really want to give it to them before they're quite ready. With that being said, though, I think there's two things in life that you always have to have. And this is just a personal belief for not just myself, but for anybody and for all people, right? You always have to be able to have optimism and hope. Like, to have redemption. We are also human beings, which means we are full of mistakes. It means we are going to mess up, we're going to screw up, and while unfortunately not everybody is able to recover, that ability to recover is necessary. You need to have hope or optimism, and you need to be able to have redemption. I firmly believe this in life. And as I've been going through these teams, and I want to be very clear with anybody listening, I don't just pick a headline or pick a catchy phrase or whatever and then just, okay, this is exactly what I'm doing, this is what I'm saying, and I won't budge off this because of X, Y, or Z. As I go through and examine the teams, I'm looking at rosters, I'm looking at schedules, I'm basing it off what we saw last year, sometimes my opinion does change, and I write out on my laptop, okay, this is what I want to talk about, and then I will retcon change. I will take this new information as I'm studying and learning more, and I will change what I'm going to come on here and say. A lot of you should also do this with your political beliefs. Once you've got some more information, once you've actually learned something, learning, it's cool, we all can do it. You should be able to sit there and go, okay, I did think this, but maybe now I think that. And so again, I was not high on either of these divisions, which is why I was so okay with skipping the AFC South last week. And I was okay with saving the NFC South this week because I wasn't sure if I was even going to cover them. But as I said, those two things that we all need, optimism or hope, whichever word you want to use, and redemption, these two divisions embody it more than anybody. Let's start with the NFC South. This is the division of redemption. If you want to go from at a coaching level, quarterback level, whoever, as a franchise, these are 4 franchises in the NFC South that are looking for redemption. Let's start with the Atlanta Falcons, who I think most people are picking to win the division. Kirk Cousins, we know the young talent, even though it's never fully materialized. We know Drake London, we know Kyle Pitts, we know Bijan Robinson. Now you have a stable quarterback, what we expect to be a stable quarterback in Kirk Cousins. This has been a very popular pick to win the NFC South. But this is a redemption tour for those young guys who have not quite lived up to the hype. Kyle Pitts, who, again, we all see the talent, we all see the athleticism, but Kyle Pitts doesn't have multiple 1,000-yard seasons or multiple 10-touchdown seasons or multiple Pro Bowl seasons. And this is the guy who was drafted higher as a tight end than anyone in the history of the sport. Kirk Cousins is coming off a major injury. This is a story of redemption, and it goes and is applicable to every single team in this division. Let's go to the Panthers, a team right now that is getting made fun of, laughed, mocked online religiously and by news outlets and sports media, because we are now, to my favorite team's credit, or to my favorite team's help, the Russell Wilson trade was talked about as potentially the worst trade in NFL history. And then the Bryce Young trade happened. And now it's been Caleb Williams and DJ Moore, and now Rome Odunze is a part of that. And I think some of the draft picks even led to Keenan Allen. And all we keep seeing is this is who the Bears got and who the Panthers got. It's just Bryce Young. So the Bears got several players, including a quarterback that is more highly touted than Bryce Young. And the Panthers only got Bryce Young. And Bryce Young did not have a good rookie season. There's a lot of struggles. There's a lot of physical issues struggling where the thing, it's one thing to not be as successful as the world wants you to be, but it's another thing when the world calls out why you're not going to be successful, and that exact thing happens. Bryce Young is a smaller quarterback, and the same thing applies to all smaller quarterbacks. Arm strength, size, durability, and Bryce Young looked small. It wasn't just that the fact the NFL was fast. It wasn't just that he was a rookie. Those things we can look past. But because he struggled, and to the average eye, it was very apparent this dude is small. This dude is not, he doesn't look like a professional athlete. We're going to talk about the Olympics in a little bit. And when you watch the Olympics, even if you're not into the individual competition, maybe you're not into swimming, you're not into table tennis, etc., pole vaulting, you see these people and they look like athletes. They're bigger, stronger, faster than the average person you see walking around. Bryce Young doesn't look like that. Hell, he was getting clowned on Twitter a week ago because when he showed up to camp, he looked like a middle schooler walking to class. Like he's just a smaller dude than your average athlete. It's a redemption story and a redemption season for Bryce Young. Let's go to the Saints. You think Dennis Allen doesn't need some redemption? A guy that was once thought of as a high-end defensive coordinator, a top coaching prospect, and now that he's gotten the chance, back-to-back losing seasons, the fan base isn't exactly happy with him. Derek Carr, a guy who, again, at one point was a franchise quarterback. He had led then the Oakland Raiders to their best season since their Super Bowl year. Was a Pro Bowl guy, a guy that most people would have said was in that fringe top 10 category at his, now what's potentially the peak of his career. You don't think he's in line for a redemption story? He doesn't want to bounce back and show everybody, hey, I can still play? And then you have the Buccaneers, who was last year's redemption team. Baker Mayfield, again, similar to Derek Carr, Pro Bowl quarterback, gets a team to the playoffs who had not been there in several years in the Browns, wins a playoff game, and not just a playoff game, wins a playoff game against Pittsburgh. The rival that never acknowledges you as a rival. We have these in sports where there's some teams that just don't quite, like the Clippers and Lakers, but the Lakers never really acknowledged the Clippers as a rival throughout the majority of NBA history. And Baker Mayfield, the number 1 overall pick, who was maligned that he was picked number 1, gets that team to the playoffs, and he beats that team for his 1 playoff win. But then he starts to fall down. He's not playing as well. He's hurt, etc., etc. They run him out of Cleveland. He gets to Tampa in post Brady, and it's like, hey, you get a 1-year prove-it deal. See if you can do it. So the redemption, the team that won the division last year, again, Baker Mayfield. There's some stats that you don't realize how rare they are. Baker Mayfield, the amount of years played and to lead 2 different franchises to both to the playoffs and both to dominant playoff wins. Go look at who's in that category with Baker Mayfield. And I'm not the biggest Baker guy, but you can't take away from what he's accomplished. The NFC South is the division of redemption. Then let's go to the AFC South. The other thing you need to have in life, you need to have optimism. You need to have hope. You need to be able to see the brighter future. You need to be able to see what's going to be on the other side, even if you're not there yet. Well, the Jaguars, who a lot of people would say they should have been there last year or 2 years ago, then when they got Trevor Lawrence, there was this whole idea of it was be Trevor Lawrence, Urban Meyer. That obviously didn't work out. And then you get Trevor Lawrence, Doug Peterson. They get to the playoffs. They have the historic comeback. And that was what they want to be. Then they had a step back last year. But they sit there and took the information they've got for the last couple of years. And inside that building, they know more than anybody else in terms of their particular franchise, their particular roster. And they said, you know what? We can see it. Even though everybody else right now is clowning us, making fun of us, and Trevor didn't play well, and we ended the season, we started off 8-3, and then we ended the season horribly to the point we didn't even make the playoffs despite that 8-3 start. We were fighting for a number 1 seed in the AFC all the way to not being in the postseason. We can still see, we're going to take the viewpoint of optimism. We are going to see the brighter future. We are going to sign Trevor Lawrence. You can say what you want about the contract, but Jacksonville said, you know what? This is what we're signing up for. We're signing up for a better future, a brighter future. That's what we want. Go down the list. The Colts, who have an extremely optimistic future. Shane Steichen without Anthony Richardson. And we're going to him in a second. Once he went down, he got Gardner Minshew and that offense to still put up points, still get them to the playoffs. Obviously, they didn't really have a chance once they were there because it became a talent issue at a certain point. But if you're looking at it from the viewpoint of optimism, they have the right coach. When it was both, we're not sure about Gannon, who's defensive coordinator. When Philly lost both its coordinators, they went and obviously Steichen went to the Colts and Gannon went to the Arizona Cardinals. We're still not sure if Gannon's going to get it right. But really successful coaches, really good coaches, they figure out their side of the ball almost immediately. And Steichen proved, with or without my starting quarterback, I can get this offense to move the ball, be productive. And you have the optimism of what you saw in those handful of games with Richardson, where he looked explosive, dynamic. Yes, he was running a little too recklessly, and that's what ended up leading to him getting hurt. But the reality is, you saw those flashes, you saw those moments, and in the AFC, and this isn't my original take, but I believe this wholeheartedly. I just can't take credit for it. If you are in the AFC specifically right now, you cannot do what New England did a few years ago with Mac Jones and take a guy who has a theoretically high floor, low ceiling. Because in the AFC, there's 15 in Kansas City. There's number 8 in Baltimore. You got Allen in Buffalo, Joe Burrow in Cincinnati. The best high-end quarterbacks all exist in the AFC currently. You're not beating those guys by having a high floor quarterback. So you can't take a Mac Jones and say, okay, well, if he's just good or okay or a little above average, that's enough. No, you are going to need someone you can look at optimistically and say, he's going to be it one day. And so they took the high upside, super high upside, but a lot of risk, Anthony Richardson, and he looked like the risk could pay off. Yes, is there still risk involved? Obviously. He only played a handful of games and only got into 5 games. But what he showed you from an arm talent and athletic ability, like you saw there. You saw it. And you have to be able to see that to be confident moving forward. Even if you're not as high on the other quarterbacks from a talent perspective, Will Levis in Tennessee, as they turned over from what was Derrick Henry, defense, smash mouth football, run the ball, run the ball, run the ball, Will Levis, we're going to give you the keys now. And Levis is interesting. Whereas Richardson, you saw these flashes, but he was a rookie, and they said he got hurt. Levis isn't the athlete that Richardson is, but you saw some of the composure in the pocket. You saw the throws that you need to make at the NFL level. Yes, was there some inconsistency? Absolutely. He's a really young player, really young quarterback. There's going to be some of that. But Tennessee is deciding, hey, look, Vrabel, we appreciate it. You got us to stable, but we want to look into the future, and we don't want to just be stable. We want the potential for spectacular. We want the potential for amazing. So we're going to go get a new coach. We're going to have our new quarterback. We're going to fully give him the keys. We want to look in the future and say, hey, this is a future I want. And then you have, obviously, again, the same way to the Buccaneers, where they were the example of this the prior year, the Houston Texans, who the entire NFL, the entire world of sports media looked at, not that there wasn't C.J. Stroud supporters coming into the league, but nobody thought he was going to be that. And Houston had to sit there and go, we have CJ, we have D'Amico, so we have our coach and our quarterback, and we nailed it seemingly for both of them, hit them both out the park. Got the franchise guy for years to come at the two most important things you can do. Like coach, quarterback, you got to get that right, and you can deal with a less than stellar GM, less than stellar ownership, but you got to get coach, quarterback right. They also hit on Stingley at corner. Excuse me. They got a couple receivers. They can start to see what is going to end up being, or what they hope to see, is one of the better rosters forming in the NFL, along with one of its better quarterbacks. They had last year to be able to see into the future and say, look, you know what? I know everyone's laughing at us. I know everyone think like 2 years ago, Lovie Smith won a game that they wanted to lose, right? So sometimes this stuff is accidental. Sometimes optimism can be accidental. You might not think it's the right situation, but life has a way of just working, and it doesn't really ask you if you're okay with it. It makes you adapt. But now look where Houston is compared to they were 2 years ago. The AFC South has 4 young quarterbacks. You might not love all of them. You might think one of them, you might think they're overpaid, not enough arm talent, injury risk, whatever. That is the division of optimism. The NFC South is a division of redemption. Coaches, quarterbacks, teams that are just coming off these less than stellar seasons, they want to bounce back. And in life, don't we all deserve that? Don't we all deserve to look forward into the future and say, you know what? Maybe it's not happening right now, but I can see what this could be in a year, 2 years, 5 years. And don't we also deserve that if we make mistakes and we're all human, we're all going to do it? The ability to redeem ourselves, the ability to sit there and come back from whatever situation we're in. Again, I didn't think these two divisions were that interesting, which is why I was almost okay skipping them entirely. But then I really started looking at it, and and the way my brain works really in this show format first, and then it kind of starts to go outward. The division of optimism, the division of redemption. Remember, in almost every division you see this. These are stories. We're putting together storylines. Putting together, how do you describe the NFL? Told you yesterday, the NFC West, smartest division in football. Almost every single division you can go through and look at it, and you can figure out, you could write the story, and you could tell it to someone. excuse me. We are going to take a quick break here. It didn't happen, but something I said on the show yesterday, we got really, really close to that result happening. Now, I didn't predict it, but I did give the hypothetical what if, and even though it didn't fully come true, I still want to talk about it and address it because it was still impressive, even if it's maybe not quite the moment it deserved to be because it was not finished. This is HardFoul Radio. We'll be back momentarily.
Yeah. Spence. Nigga, where am I going? Drop the four with my cup, now I'm floating. I can't feel a thing, to be real, I just go through the motions. Where am I going? Nigga, I'm in deep like the ocean. I've been in my bag, everybody around me, I'm ghosting. Where am I going? Drop the four with my cup, now I'm floating. I can't feel a thing, to be real, I just go through the motions. Where am I going? Nigga, I'm in deep like the ocean. I've been in my bag, everybody around me, I'm ghosting. Where am I going? I don't know.
Thank you, David Griffin. So the Pelicans acquired DeJounte Murray from the Hawks. While I am sad to see Larry Nance go, he was an emotional leader for the second unit. The reality is a potential starting lineup with Murray, Herb Jones, B.I., hopefully resigns, Zion, probably throw the rookie in there to start because you need a big, and it's another guy who's not going to demand a lot of shots, similar to Herb Jones. Then off the bench, potentially, if he's willing to accept it, C.J. McCollum, Trey Murphy, Jordan Hawkins, Jose Alvarado. Yeah, you're not going to necessarily be big, and so you're going to need one more, maybe just another 7-footer on the roster as far as some bulk and some size. Don't just get out rebounded every game. But length, skill, athleticism, shooting, Pelicans pull this off, and if Willie Green is really that guy as a head coach, that's a top 4 seed, potentially top 2 seed in the Western Conference. Thank you, David Griffin. And we are back. This is HardFoul Radio. Appreciate everybody for tuning in today. So, excuse me. Man, got a really bad case of the coughs today. So, talked about yesterday on yesterday's show, I threw out the hypothetical, which was, what if Jokic beat Team USA? Now, hear me out. There's obvious parts to this, and I even said this yesterday, where I was not expecting them to beat Team USA. I was not rooting for them to beat Team USA, but I did think it was interesting. And, excuse me, I thought it was interesting because at some point, and this is what the all-time legends of the game have, there's a uniqueness to their resume, right? Like, Jordan, it isn't just 6 for 6 titles. While that is incredibly impressive, it's not just 10 scoring titles. The shoes attached to Michael separate him from almost every other legend to ever exist. Similar to LeBron. LeBron is not just putting up stats, grabbing accolades. He's the king. He's had this storyline throughout his entire career that you could trace. Like, it was there's a uniqueness to all of these all-time Hall of Famers. Magic, a 6'9" point guard. That was unheard of. Like, that was just unheard of. I know now in the NBA it's more common for guys who are taller to handle the ball, but Magic was basically the first to do it that proficiently and that great. Larry Bird, arguably the game's first true great shooter. Take Steph today. He's acknowledged as the greatest shooter to ever walk the planet. There's a uniqueness to all of their games, their resumes. It's not just 3-time champ, 4-time champ, whatever, this amount of points, etc. To the true, and this is what separates these guys in terms of not just where they are in the pecking order, but how people view them. Tim Duncan was the big fundamental, which might have been boring to a lot of people, but he was so over the top with being, it's kind of funny, he was so over the top with being low to the floor, and that, like, his floor was so much better than everybody else's floor, but he wasn't overly athletic. He was just this extremely skilled fundamental guy, and that's how we remember him. Shaq, bigger than everybody, larger than everyone. It's one of the things that, even though we love him, it's one of the things that was hard for Kobe to escape, is because Kobe's whole thing was, oh, this is the second coming of Mike. But because when you're the second coming of something, it takes away from your uniqueness. Now, we bring up all those players. Jokic already has a certain level of uniqueness to him. He is a second-round pick. We all know the Taco Bell story, and that's already a part of his uniqueness. It's not just, I would say the foreign player is a part of it too, but if I'm going to say the first great foreign player, that's more of Hakeem or Dirk, and I'd probably give it to Dirk. Hakeem's thing is kind of the footwork and dream shake. So I won't give him necessarily the uniqueness for being a great foreign player, even though he's got a chance to be, when it's all said and done, the greatest foreign player ever. This would have been a moment, though. So Serbia was up 11 at the half and up 15 in the fourth quarter. Now, yes, Team USA stormed back, took the lead, won the game. LeBron, Steph, KD, the legends from the United States played like legends, and it was fantastic. It was a very fun and exciting game. And remember, I don't talk a lot about the Olympics. So these last 2 days is about as much Olympic talk as we've had on this show ever. But if Jokic, I think there's an argument. If Embiid had maybe played worse, I think this would have been true. But I think because Embiid didn't no-show, even though there was reports of him not playing at all, Jokic almost single-handedly beating the Dream Team, or beating this team would have been, I think, right below his MVPs, and I think you could argue it against his second MVP as his biggest achievement. Because these teams are not even close talent-wise. So the fact he played them even in exhibition, and then you have this game where they're up 15 in the fourth quarter, and no one's going to blame him for blowing the lead. Again, the talent gap is massive. So one NBA guy that is able to hold a candle and compete with all of these other all-NBA guys, and he's able to hold his own when he's on the clearly far less talented team, that's incredible. And again, if he had dominated Embiid and they had won the game or within a shot of the game, people still, when you get into like real Olympic basketball nerds or real, like people that are really passionate about it, I'm not using nerds to be demeaning here, I'm just saying like I'm a sports nerd. Spain still gets recognition for how close they played the 08 team. And that's one of the knocks against the 08 team, is that they didn't blow people out the same way this team's been doing it or the Dream Team has been doing it. it also shows, though, how centralized basketball is, especially with how much one person can centralize it. And this is where I think a lot of the conversations we have to change how we want to discuss these hypothetical what-if matchups. Again, Jokic plays the U.S. even, then next game he's up 15 in the fourth quarter with far less talent. I think most people would tell you the 08 team is more talented than the Dream Team, or it's an argument, and this 24 team, I think a lot of people are telling you this is the most talented team we've ever put together. And that includes the Dream Team, includes the Redeem Team, all that, right? But when people don't realize when they say, oh, who would win 1v1, we just start listing off names, and we're like, oh, well, they have more better names or more great names, so this team would clearly win. Jokic's proof in this game and in the previous game against the USA, one guy in basketball, more than any other sport, can just dominate and have the entire game run through him. So it doesn't necessarily matter if you have more great names on the 24 team or more great names on the Redeem Team versus the Dream Team, or what, to pick any Olympic year. But if one guy can dominate like this with far less talent, when we compare 92 versus this year, what if MJ just dominates the entire game? Oh, well, it's, and we all know, like, MJ's not as great as we think it is, and I think MJ's the GOAT. He's not better than LeBron, KD, and Steph. Like, eventually you rack up enough names, you're like, okay, MJ is, if you think he's better than LeBron, okay, well, he's not better than LeBron and Steph, or LeBron and Curry, stuff like that, right? So, and that's how we've always, I think a lot of these conversations have always been viewed, is that, oh, we're going to look at it from the perspective of who has the most best names. But if you look at the NBA, take away that stretch 5-6 years of everybody coming together for big threes, the last couple champions have all been centralized around one guy and then role players. Jokic with his title, Giannis with his title. This is how basketball can be played, and this is how basketball actually works. In any other sport, you could be Tom Brady, Mahomes, and your offensive line or your defense isn't good, and you could lose that game even if you're as great as the two greatest we've maybe ever seen play the game. You'd have total control of your side of the ball, your position, all that stuff, and you might still not be able to just will your team to win. You could be the closest you get in basketball because you play offense and defense, and when you're a all-timer like that, you could play 38, 40 minutes, 45 minutes in an NBA game, and you can dominate from start to finish. The closest you get in any other sport is a starting pitcher. But a starting pitcher could go out there and throw 9 innings, a perfect game, and if nobody gets a hit on his team, he doesn't get the win. His team's not in a better position to win. So in the NBA, yes, there's more great names if you want to just go down a list of this team versus that team. But that's not how basketball's really ever been played, nor how it's really ever been determined. I know we like to say, because we've seen some of these more, we know the teams that are quote-unquote more stacked, either by free agency or by drafting. Like, we know how great the Warriors were in 2017. We know how great the 98 Bulls are. But the reality is most great teams are centralized around one great player who can dominate the game, impact it more than anybody else in any other sport. A great NBA player can do more than any position player or pitcher in baseball, or more than any position player in the NFL, even a quarterback. And I think Jokic is proof positive of that. And again, I'm not trying to, I don't make a huge deal out of the Olympics per se, but he does this in the NBA. Like, he is their second best player on the Nuggets is Jamal Murray, who has some really impressive postseason statistics, but Jamal Murray's not some full-fledged superstar. Jamal Murray's not a guy who's going to get you 24, 25 a night where he's in this, you know how Phoenix has KD and Booker and the Lakers have LeBron and AD. Jamal Murray's not in that class. Like, those are all Olympic-level athletes. Those are all NBA guys. Jamal Murray's not that. Jamal Murray's never been an all-star team. And we all know Jamal Murray can play, and he's a good player, but never made an all-star team. Your next best player is Aaron Gordon, Michael Porter Jr. Like, that's how centralizing and dominant one guy can be in the NBA on a basketball court, and that's not available to all the other leagues. Like, we could compare all-time football teams to another all-time football team, and you got to take into consideration offense, defense, coaching. Versus in basketball, the real all-time greats, Jokic, LeBron, Michael, a Shaq, a Kobe, they can just outright dominate the entirety of the game, and they can impact it more than any other athlete in any other sport. So, I don't know, it's interesting. Like I said, I didn't root for, I obviously wasn't rooting against the USA, but it was just proof positive of how dominant Jokic can be and just how it works in basketball, how just basketball works different than any other sport. We're going to take a break here. Slightly different show today. We still have A&M I'm recording with Matt and Jake right after I get off here, so don't forget to go tune into that. Tomorrow, episode's dropping. When we come back from this break, we are going to break down the NFC South standings, and then we're going to take one more final break, and we're going to break down the AFC South. This is HardFoul Radio. Appreciate you guys.
Yeah. Spent. Nigga, where am I going? Dropped the four with my cup, now I'm floating. I can't feel a thing, to be real, I just go through the motions. Where am I going? Nigga, I'm in deep like the ocean. I've been in my bag, everybody around me, I'm ghosting. Where am I going? Dropped the four with my cup, now I'm floating. I can't feel a thing, to be real, I just go through the motions. Where am I going? Nigga, I'm in deep like the ocean. I've been in my bag, everybody around me, I'm ghosting. Where am I going? I don't know.
At number 9, Caleb Williams. Funny enough, he has one of Justin Herbert's old weapons in Keenan Allen. If you look at what the Bears did, and I don't like hyperbole statements, but this is one that works, which is Caleb Williams probably has the best situation for a number 1 overall pick in NFL history. At number 4, this is the one we're probably all a little too high on, but it's okay. I am drinking the Kool-Aid, and that is C.J. Stroud with the Houston Texans. D'Amico Ryans, C.J. Stroud, Nico Collins, how we always say, or we've been saying since this era of rookie quarterbacks, when guys play right away, you pretty much know right off the bat. Which leaves us with number 1, and I know it's the best situation because most people don't even think the quarterback's all that good or And we are back. This is HardFoul Radio. So I wanted to start with the redemption division. So we're going to start with the NFC South. Again, if you weren't here at the beginning of the show, I called them the division of redemption. There's a bunch of storylines here for all these teams wanting to bounce back. When you are trying to think of how to describe these teams and you're trying to really learn about them, it is a different process than just outright examining and going, okay, what are they actually going to be? Because some teams are just, there could be really cool storylines, there could be a lot of promise, and so they just don't have the talent. And the NFC South falls into that for me. So, in the NFC South, starting at number 4, I just think they have the least talent in the division. That's the Carolina Panthers. Now, I don't want to say Bryce Young isn't going to work because I just don't. I've seen it before enough in my life where first handful of games or first year for these guys to come out and play right away now, it doesn't look pretty. There's issues. NFL's really fast. There's other all-pro athletes all over the place, especially when you come from a place like Alabama where you normally have the best weapons, you have the best O-line. When you come from an Ohio State, a Michigan, etc., and then you're now, everybody's got 5 stars. Everybody's ready to go. Everyone's just as talented as you. Everyone's just as athletic as you. Everyone has all this stuff working in their favor the same way that you do. It's tough. And so I think they just don't quite have the talent that the other 3 teams do. This is a shockingly, surprisingly talented division. Like, the Bucs have, between Baker's resurgence, they've got receivers, they've got guys left over from that defense that was dominant when they got a Super Bowl a couple years ago. The Saints, if you look at the Saints roster, especially with the potential addition of Justin Simmons, which makes me sad, but it is what it is. Like, that defense, there's names there, Matthew, Simmons, Cameron Jordan. If Derek Carr can rebound, they have a Chris Olave. Like, there's a lot of talent in this division, which is why I think Carolina, while their whole goal should be get Bryce Young right? Like, I heard this before, and I used to, as a fan, no one really ever wants to hear this, but it's so true, and it makes sense long term. Not everybody's trying to win the Super Bowl. And that's not that not everyone's trying to compete, or not that everyone's trying to win games, but just not everyone's trying to win the Super Bowl. And the Carolina Panthers should be able to objectively look at themselves and go, look, we have, I use the same kind of logic with Denver. We have the second richest owner in the sport, only to Denver. We're going to have a lot of cap space. If Bryce Young hits and he works this year, and you have a smart GM, and you believe in your head coach, you make it work. And if Bryce Young hits, you have your foundation. You don't got to win a lot of games. Like I said, Bryce Young doesn't. This could be a 3 or 4 win team. But if Bryce Young can put together 3,500 to 4,000 yards, he can put together that 25 to 30 touchdown, low interception range. Like, he looks like an NFL starting quarterback. I don't really like throwing out numbers, but I'm just trying to give an example here. If they look competitive, because they didn't look very competitive last year. If they look competitive in over half their games, obviously there's going to be some teams that are just more talented. Like, if they play, they're going to play teams that are just better than them. And that's fine, and they're going to lose those games, and they're probably going to get blown out a couple times. But if they look competitive against the okay teams or the good teams or the average teams, and they start to get themselves, and they take them from really bad to where now, okay, like they look good or average, that's what they're really trying to play for. They're not playing for a Super Bowl. Remember, 2 years ago, the Lions were still losing games, and their defense was awful. But they were competing, they were playing hard, and they eventually got the defense right. Jared Goff came into his own again, and boom, now the Lions look like they're one of the teams potentially fighting for a Super Bowl. But they weren't a few years ago. And the Panthers are in that boat of they are not playing for a Super Bowl. They are not playing really for the playoffs, barring something drastic happening. They are playing to get Bryce Young right. Because you invested not only a first overall pick, you traded for it. So we've all seen the trade, them and the Bears. if you want to start unworking that narrative and even if the Bears are the long-time winners of that trade because they got so many players, and if Caleb is Caleb or the player that a lot of people believe he can be, the Bears are always going to win that trade. But if Bryce Young can get to being a quality NFL quarterback, that's your goal, Carolina. That's your goal. That's it. And similar to what I said about the Bears and what the actual expectations should be for Caleb Williams compared to the history of the franchise, you take out Cam Newton's MVP year, you're fighting Jake Delhomme's ghost? Like, what are we, like, get Bryce Young right. That's all you got to do, Carolina. Get Bryce Young right. The number 3, the Saints. Now, I like the Saints. I think I like everything about the Saints except Derek Carr. I just started naming off their defense. Like I said, Cam Jordan, the linebacker they just re-signed. They're probably going to sign Justin Simmons, Tyrann Mathieu, Marshawn Lattimore, Chris Olave. Like, they have guys. Alvin Kamara. Like, this is a talented roster. But I think they have a shot fighter at quarterback. I think Derek Carr was really good early in his career. He got Oakland they didn't win the division, but they got them to the playoffs, and he looked like he was up and coming and ascending, and the reality was he did ascend, but he flatlined, and that was as great as he was ever going to be, and he has progressively gotten worse and worse instead of getting progressively better and better. So while I think the Saints have enough talent to compete, and they are going to look competitive in a lot of games, and they are going to have games where it's like, oh, that looks like a playoff team. 2 most important positions to get it right: coach, quarterback. I don't think they have the right coach. I don't think they have the right quarterback. Now, I do think there's a wild card, and I am buying it. I don't buy a lot of NFL training camp stuff, but I have really liked a lot of the clips that have come out from Spencer Rattler. And I like the energy around him, the enthusiasm around him. Again, I'm a big optimism person, especially when it comes to sports. So Spencer Rattler's a huge wild card for them, and I think that's going to play to their advantage. And there's a chance he does come in and he revolutionizes that team and they get on a win streak, and this could be a sneaky team. And like I said, they got talent everywhere else. And if Rattler hits and they get him in there, let's say halfway through the season, and he hits, the defense is playing like how they want to, now the Saints become a dangerous team. Because the Saints are in also one of the biggest things about Rattler potentially hitting. The Saints are in one of, if not the worst salary cap position of any team in the NFL. Go look at how their contracts, they did not. I know Mickey Loomis is very well respected. He got a Super Bowl with Sean Payton and Drew Brees, but their contract situation is absolutely wild. And they have to do a lot of stuff. They did a lot of, which I don't think was wrong, but they did a lot of borrowing from the future in those final years of Drew Brees to, make that team better. They did a lot of borrowing from the future, but that bill is becoming due. But if you get to reset it with a rookie quarterback who you don't have to pay for several years, like Rattler could save the franchise. I'm trying to be hyperbolic. I'm not trying to hype him up to be more than what he should be, but if he hits, that could be franchise saving. And number 2, Kirk Cousins just feels kind of like a second place quarterback, right? Like, he's good and he can be really good at times, but he just doesn't feel like he's the guy or one of the guys, which is why even in this offseason when everyone's been getting paid at the quarterback position, and I understand he's coming off an injury, but Dak had a worse injury, you could argue. I know Kirk is still torn ACL and it's significant, but Dak, when he got his first contract, his first mega contract, he was coming off an even worse injury, and Jerry still gave him the money. Everybody got paid this offseason. Kirk got significantly less. Now, I would still take $45 million a year, just saying, but 45, while everyone else is getting 55, tells you what they think about you. And again, there's talent on this team. Kyle Pitts, Drake London, Bijan Robinson. They got some guys on defense, and I think they're going to obviously be better than they were last year. But Kirk is just a really highly paid transition quarterback, and there's something weird about Atlanta. I'm not going to try to defend or explain, just no one understands the Michael Penix situation. Nobody. Nothing about it makes sense from why they picked him after getting Cousins. They told Cousins, they did what the Vikings told Kirk Cousins, which is why he wanted to leave. The Falcons just did it to him. And they did it with a guy who is older than everybody else. Doesn't going to want to sit, you're not going to want to sit Michael Penix for 2 to 3 years, because then he's going to be almost approaching 30. That's crazy. Without ever taking a snap. And it looks bad too, because we all saw Arthur Blank during the draft night walk up to the GM and go, "Hey, I can't read lips," but everyone saw him go, "Hey, what the fuck are we doing?" So the Falcons, second place. I think talent-wise, they're probably the most. If everybody plays up and everybody plays up to their expectations and plays up to their talent, they absolutely could be the most talented team in the division. But something about them just feels weird, and I don't think they're that much better than the Saints. So this, I think, could very easily be flip-flopped, especially if Justin Simmons signs with the Saints. But right now, I am basing it off of Justin Simmons not being there. But that might be the deciding factor of both of these teams being around that 7 to 9 win range. And if Justin Simmons is there and he plays as he's been playing the last couple years in Denver, that could be what swings and puts New Orleans in second place and Atlanta down in third, which means winning the division. I was never a Baker guy, but Baker has earned the respect to be the favorite in his own division. He has. Baker has played incredibly well. Baker has been his own, again, redemption is the storyline of this division, and very few people have had the redemption in life that Baker Mayfield has by his age. Most people don't experience that in a lifetime. He's experienced that before turning 30. Walk on. We all know the story, what happened in college, what happened in the NFL with the Browns. It's just a really cool story. This team is not that far removed from winning a Super Bowl, and I understand, yes, there's a giant drop-off from Tom Brady to Baker Mayfield, but there is still talent on this roster, and I believe in Baker. So, with that being said, we're going to take a quick break here, and then we are going to go talk about the AFC South. This is HardFoul Radio. We'll be back momentarily.
Yeah. It's bats. Nigga, where am I going? Drop the four with my cup, now I'm floating. I can't feel a thing, to be real, I just go through the motions. Where am I going? Nigga, I'm in deep like the ocean. I've been in my bag, everybody around me, I'm ghosting. Where am I going? Drop the four in my cup, now I'm floating. I can't feel a thing, to be real, I just go through the motions. Where am I going? Nigga, I'm in deep like the ocean. I've been in my bag, everybody around me, I'm ghosting. Where am I going? I don't know.
I'm curious to see, and this isn't really the week to be talking about this kind of thing, but I'm curious to see. I think Naruto ended a long time ago, right?
That's valid, yeah. Almost 10 years now?
Yeah, Naruto ended a long time ago. The Boruto anime is stalled. I think there are a lot of people online that, and I think Dragon Ball follows this same thing. I think a lot of people online got a lot of clout from and made careers off of
Those
Naruto
series,
predictions.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm really intrigued to see what happens when people that have been doing this with One Piece for a long ass time, Grand Line review.
Mm-hmm.
What else are you going to review?
Don't worry, he does Hunter x Hunter. That can never fail him.
Yeah, I mean, he'll get a chapter every year then. Huh? So he's guaranteed one video a year.
And we are back. This is HardFoul Radio. Appreciate everybody as always. We do have to get A&M get up here started pretty quick, so I'm going to run through the AFC South a lot quicker than I probably like to. But for the AFC South, we got to go. I'm just going to run through it here really quick. I have the Texans winning the division. I think the Colts behind if Anthony Richardson, who I'm projecting to be healthy, him and Shane Steichen, I think have a lot of potential here. The Jags for me come in third. I do think Lawrence rebounds and he looks in between that version we saw at the end and that 8-3 start. And then I'm not a big Will Levis guy, so I think the Titans. And again, I think it's going to be the least interesting division in football. I think Anthony Richardson's really exciting. I think Shane Steichen's a really good head coach. I think we're kind of overselling the Texans, but I do really like them. This division can be a little off, man. And so I think C.J. Stroud and D'Amico Ryans are the best bet. I think they're the most consistent week in, week out. I think Steichen and Richardson are going to be extremely explosive. And the Jags they're the Jags. Trevor Lawrence I think he's going to be good. I don't think he's going to be great. And then Will Levis, I have the least amount of personal optimism for. But we're going to get ready here to start A&M, so don't forget to check that out tomorrow when that drops. Appreciate everybody, as always, for tuning in.